So this video is not about a question. It's not a question from someone. It's an idea that I had. And normally I put these in coffee times, but I wanted to do it here as an answer because I get lots of questions about this topic. But this isn't a specific question. The topic of this video is books of the Bible. You know, there's all kinds of interesting theories in books of the Bible. The Old Testament, of course, is from the Torah, and it's you know, a Jewish writing from way before Jeshua was born. The books of the Bible are interesting because during the time of Jeshua, we didn't carry around giant scrolls and documents of writings of anything. We worked individually, one-on-one with people, and we weren't writing. The stories that were coming out of that group walking around the countryside was all done through oral tradition. It was all spoken. Stories were told. And those stories that got told were handed down. Well, you guys know the telephone game, how that can change many things. Now, during that time period, there was a whole bunch of groups and organizations that really wanted fulfillment of the ancient Jewish prophecies. And so things started to be altered to match Jewish prophecy. Now, this is one place where I have parted ways with the writings of Dolores Cannon, who, by the way, I enjoyed her books. I read her books. People have accused me of not reading her books because they've taken her books as the absolute Bible. They've created almost a religion around her work, and I understand that. But this is where we part company because I can only go by what my memories are, and my memories are we avoided the Essenes because they wanted him to become a Messiah, and it was against what he believed. He was not a messianic Jewish law follower. He was explaining to us that we are our own Messiah, we are our own connection to source. Ye are gods, is what he said. And when we start looking at our experiences from those spaces of we have to fulfill a ancient prophecy, things start to happen. Now, what's interesting is I just watched a documentary the other day, archaeologists talking about the birth of Jeshua. And they're like, well, we know that there was two Bethlehems in Israel. One is closer to Jerusalem in the land of Canaan, right? And then the other one is in Galilee, and the Bible says that Jesus was from Galilee, and in Melchizedek, he was a Canaanite king, and as was David, and for Jeshua to be the prophet of God, he had to be the Son of God, the Messiah. He had to be of the line of David. So in other words, he had to come from the Bethlehem that was hundreds of miles away. So his 9-month pregnant mother had to ride a donkey hundreds of miles to get there. And then they said that the concept of the reason they were traveling is because they had to have a census done in their hometown. And archaeologists, they say there's no proof that any of those kind of censuses were done and that you had to travel back to your hometown. But to tie it into Judaic prophecy, he had to be born there. So he became the son of David, born there. So this is all trying to fulfill Judaic prophecy. When you look at the idea of the books of John and the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke especially, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are very similar, right? They pretty much tell the exact same story, and they are said to be written about 50 years after the crucifixion. And there's a theological theory right now that all the books were written from one single source. They were actually copied from a single source. And so, that being said, they themselves are in question. The book of John is the most esoteric book in the Bible, so it's much harder to interpret it in a way that is anti-Judaic law. So, and there are things in the book of John that I think were added later to match Judaic law. And then it comes to Paul, who the majority of the New Testament is written by. Paul, who by his own declaration never met Jeshua in life. He only had a vision of Jeshua, which people are going to say, well, what do you mean only? That's, okay. He only had a vision of Jeshua. He never met him in life. When he walked the world, he declared himself the apostle of the Gentiles. In the Gnostic text, there's a book called by James, the brother of Jeshua, the book of James, brother of Jeshua, and in there he calls Paul the great liar. And when you look at that text and you look at the writings of Paul, there are many things Paul says that make no sense if God is love. At one point Paul said it's okay to beat your slave as long as your slave doesn't die, because the slave is property. He also said it's that all men should wear their hair above their shoulder, because Jeshua wore his hair above his shoulder, which wouldn't make a lot of sense during the period. But during that same period, Roman soldiers wore their hair above their shoulder. So he was very much dropping in Roman law and Roman rule and Roman things to follow. I mean, he was definitely speaking with self-interest. So you have all of these things in these books that were there. Now, let's talk about how those books ended up in the Bible. Those books ended up in the Bible in the year 325, right? 325 years after the birth of Jeshua. That is also the exact same time of the Nicene Council, when they made choices about what's going to go into that Bible. When they made those choices of what's going into the Bible, that was a council convened by Emperor Constantine, who was converting the pagan religions into Christianity, right? However, he came, and this is in documentation, he came to that council dressed as the pagan sun god and did not get baptized until his deathbed. So he lived the life of a pagan and then went to a Christian heaven because he got baptized, right? So he did not, though he is the one who modern Christianity is attributed to, he himself did not take Christianity until he died. So, and his mother is the one who he sent to the Middle East to mark all the holy sites. And when they do the deep dives in the archaeology, and they go down and they do carbon dating of the lowest things in the tomb and everything else, they find out that they can date all the sites back to the time of Constantine, 325 years after the birth of Jeshua. So even our sites that we have are in question. And so the Bible itself is full of fallacy and falsehood and manipulation and interpretation, but there is truth in there. And the way you find the truth in there, in my opinion, is when you read the books of the Bible, read looking for the loving parts, the parts that are loving. Book of John says God is love. I believe that's true. I believe that's one of the truths that's in there. Of course, I'm partial to the Book of John, but but I believe that is a truth, that God is love. And if God is love, God would never send two bears to kill 42 children because they made fun of a bald man, like the Old Testament says. But God would never beat their slave because they're property, right? God would never do those things. And because God is love. And so if you find love in there, and understand this, I truly believe that God is too big to be encompassed by one religion. I think it's too big, it's too simple, and it is something that cannot be held by the beliefs of one group. You know, I can find examples of reincarnation in the Bible. Christians will tell you it doesn't exist. But reincarnation itself predates Christianity. Buddhists and Hindus both believe in reincarnation. So it predates Christianity, but Christianity says you're wrong, right? So you can find loving truth everywhere. You know, and when you start to realize that when you follow one book and disregard all the rest and make all the rest wrong and then decide you have to sway them to your belief, doesn't sound too loving to me. So the books of the Bible, when it comes down to the history of them, are a collection of oral traditions that have been interpreted, manipulated, and edited for thousands of years. And in the end, it's your discernment. You're looking for love. Sorry. Maybe just think of looking for love in all the wrong places, right? You should be looking for love everywhere. Not just in the books, not just in the texts, not just in the Bible, the Quran, or the Bhagavad Gita. You should be looking for it everywhere. And when you look for it everywhere, guess what? You see it everywhere. And that's how your life changes. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. The John of New channel is solely funded by your generous donations and purchases of private readings and merchandise. To help out, go to johnofnew.com or use the donation link in the description below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.